हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स माइंड में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमी। ठीक है। इससे पहले यहाँ तक हमने कर लिया है, यहाँ से स्टार्ट करेंगे आज। रिकॉल फ्रॉम द प्रीवियस चैप्टर दैट द फर्म्स विल अर्न सुपर नॉर्मल प्रॉफिट so long as the price is greater than the minimum average cost and at prices less than minimum average cost. They will earn less than normal profit. Therefore, at prices greater than the minimum average cost, new firms will enter and at prices below minimum average cost. Existing firms will start ex- existing at the price level equal to the minimum average cost of the firms. Each firm will earn normal profit so that no new firm will be attracted to enter the market. Also, the existing firms will not leave the market since they are not incurring any loss by producing at this point. So, this price will prevail in the market. Therefore, free entry and exit of the firms imply that the market price will always be equal to the minimum average cost, that is, P equals to minimum A and C. From the above, it follows that the equilibrium price will be equal to the minimum average cost of the firms. In equilibrium, the quantity supplied will be determined by the market demand at that price so that they are equal. Graphically, this is shown in figure 5.5, where the market will be in equilibrium at point E, at which the demand curve DD intersect the point O is equals to minimum AC line such that the market price is P0 and the total quantity demanded and supplied is equal to Q0. At P0 minimum AC, each firm supplies same amount of output. Price determination with free entry and exit. With free entry and exit in a perfectly competitive market, the equilibrium price is always equal to minimum AC and the equilibrium quantity is determined at the intersection of the market demand curve DD with the price line P equals to minimum AC. Say Q0F. Therefore, the equilibrium number of firms in the market is equal to the number of firms required to supply Q0 output at P0, each in turn supplying Q0 amount at that price. If we denote the equilibrium number of firms by N0, then N0 equals to Q0 divided by Q0F. To understand the equilibrium price and quantity determination more clearly, let us look at the following example. Example 5.2. Consider the example of a market for wheat such that the demand curve for wheat is given as follows. QD 200 minus P for 0 is smaller than P or smaller than 200. QD equal to 0, P is smaller greater than 200. Assume that the market consists of identical firms. The supply curve of a single firm is given by QF as 10 plus P for P is greater or smaller greater or equal to 220. QF is equal to 0 for 0 is smaller or equal to P or P is smaller or equal to 20. The free entry and exit of firms would mean that the firms will never produce below minimum average cost because otherwise they will incur loss from production, in which case they will exit the market. As we know, with free entry and exit, the market will be in equilibrium at a price which equals the minimum average cost of the firms. Therefore, the equilibrium price is P0 equals to 20 at the price. Market will supply that quantity which is equal to the market demand. Therefore, from the demand curve, we get the equilibrium quantity Q0 equals to 200 minus 20 is equal to 180. Also at P0 is equal to 20, each firm supplies Q0F 10 plus 20 equals to 30. Therefore, the equilibrium number of firms is N0 is equal to Q0 divided by Q0F 180 divided by 30 equals to 6. Thus, with free entry and exit, the equilibrium price, quantity and number of firms are 20, 180 kg and 6 respectively. Shifts in demand. Let us examine the impact of shift in demand on equilibrium price and quantity when the firms can freely enter and exit the market. From the previous section, we know that free entry and exit of the firms would imply that under all circumstances equilibrium price will be equal to the minimum average cost of the existing firms. Under this condition, even if the market demand curve shifts in either direction, at the new equilibrium, the market will supply the desired quantity at the same price. In figure 5.6, DD0 is the market demand curve, which tells us how much quantity will be demanded by the consumers at different prices, and P0 denotes the price which is equal to the minimum average cost of the firms. The initial equilibrium is at point E where the demand curve DD0 cuts the P0 equals to minimum AC line and the total quantity demanded and supplied is Q0. The equilibrium number of firms is N0 in this situation. Now suppose the demand curve shifts to the right for some reason. At P0 there will be excess demand for the commodity. Some dissatisfied consumers will be willing to pay higher price for the commodity, so the price tends to rise. This gives rise to a possibility of earning supernormal profit which will attract new firms to the market. The entry of these new firms will eventually wipe out the supernormal profit and the price will again reach P0. Now higher quantity will be supplied at the same price. From the panel A, we can see that the new demand curve DD1 intersect the P0 minimum AC line at point F such that the new equilibrium will be P0 Q1 where Q1 is greater than Q0. The new equilibrium number of firms N1 is greater than N0 because of the entry of new firms. Similarly, for a leftward shift of the demand curve of D2, there will be excess supply at the price P0. In response to this excess supply, some firms which will be unable to sell their desired quantity at P0 will wish to lower their price. The price tends to decrease, which will lead to the exit of some of the existing firms and the price will again reach P0. Therefore, in the new equilibrium, less quantity will be supplied which will be equal to the reduced demand at that price. This is shown in panel B where due to the shift of demand curve from DD0 to DD2, quantity demanded and supplied will decrease to Q2, whereas the price will remain unchanged at P0. Here, the equilibrium number of firms N2 is less than N0 due to the exit of some existing firms. Thus, due to a shift in demand rightwards, leftwards, the equilibrium quantity and the number of firms will increase, decrease, whereas the equilibrium price will remain unchanged. प्राइस कैसा हो जाएगा? प्राइस जो रहेगा वो रहेगा unchanged. Shifts in demand. Initially, the demand curve was DD0, the equilibrium quantity and price were Q0 and P0 respectively, with rightward shift of the demand curve to DD1 as shown in panel A. The equilibrium quantity increases, and with leftward shift of the demand curve to DD2 as shown in panel B, the equilibrium quantity decreases. In both the cases, the equilibrium price remains unchanged at P0. Here we should note that with free entry and exit, shift in demand has a larger effect on quantity than it does with the fixed number of firms, but unlike with fixed number of firms here, we do not have any effect on equilibrium price at all. 5.2 Applications. In this section, we try to understand how the supply demand analysis can be applied. In particular, we look at two examples of government intervention in the form of price control. जो गवर्नमेंट है वो इंटरवेंशन करती है किसमें? प्राइस कंट्रोल में किस तरीके से करती है? दो एग्जांपल देखते हैं. Often it becomes necessary for the government to regulate the prices of certain goods and services when their prices are either too high or too low in comparison to the desired levels. We will analyze these issues within the framework of perfect competition to look at what impact these regulations have on the market for these goods. Price ceiling. It is not very uncommon to common across instances where government fix a maximum allowable price for certain goods. The government imposed upper limit of on the price of a good or service is called price ceiling. Price ceiling is generally imposed on necessary items like wheat, rice, kerosene, sugar, and it is fixed below the market determined price, since at the market determined price some section of the population will not be able to afford these goods. Let us examine the effects of price ceiling on market equilibrium through the example of market for wheat. Figure 5.7 shows the market supply curve SS and the market demand curve DD for wheat. The equilibrium price and quantity of wheat are P star and Q star respectively when the government imposes price ceiling at PC, which is lower than the equilibrium price level. There will be an excess demand for wheat in the market at that price. The consumers demand QC kilograms of wheat, whereas the firms supply QC dash kilograms. Hence, through the intention of the government was to help the consumers, it could end up creating shortage of wheat. How is the quantity of wheat QC dash then distributed among the consumers? One way of doing this is to distribute it to everyone through a system of rationing. Ration coupons are issued to the consumers so that no individual can buy more than a certain amount of wheat, and this stipulated amount of wheat is sold through ration shops, which are also called fair price shops. Effect of price ceiling in wheat market. The equilibrium price and quantity are P star and Q star respectively. Imposition of price ceiling at PC gives rise to excess demand in wheat market. In general, price ceiling accompanied by rationing of the goods may have the following adverse consequences on the consumers. Each consumer has to stand in long queues to buy the good from ration shops, since all consumers will not be satisfied by the quantity of the goods that they get from the fair price shop. Some of them will be willing to pay higher price for it. This may result in the creation of black market. Price floor. For certain goods and services fall in price below a particular level is not desirable, and hence government sets floor or minimum price for these goods and services. The government imposed lower limit on the price that may be charged for a particular good or services is called price floor. Most well-known examples of imposition of price floor are agricultural price support programs and the minimum wage legislation. Through an agricultural price support program, the government imposes a lower limit on the purchase price for some of the agricultural goods, and the floor is normally set at a level higher than the market determined price for these goods. Similarly, through the minimum wage legislation, the government ensures that the wage rate of the laborers does not fall below a particular level, and here again the minimum wage rate is set above the equilibrium wage rate. Figure 5.8 shows the market supply and the market demand curve for a commodity on which floor is imposed. The market equilibrium here would occur at price star and quantity star Q star, but when the government imposes a floor higher than the equilibrium price at PF, the market demand is QF, whereas the firms want to supply QF dash, thereby leading to an excess supply in the market equal to QF or QF dash. In the case of agricultural support to prevent price from falling because of excess supply, government needs to buy the surplus at the predetermined prices. In a perfectly competitive market, equilibrium occurs where market demand equals market supply. The equilibrium price and quantity are determined at the intersection of the market demand and market supply curves, where when there is fixed number of firms. Each firms employ labor up to the point where the marginal revenue product of labor equals the wage rate, with supply curve remaining unchanged when demand curve shifts rightward leftward. The equilibrium quantity increases, decreases, and equilibrium price increases, decreases with fixed numbers of firms. With demand curve, with demand curve remaining unchanged, when supply curve shifts rightward, leftward, the equilibrium quantity increases, decreases, and equilibrium price decreases, increases with fixed number of firms. When both demand and supply curves shift in the same direction, the effect on equilibrium quantity can be unambiguously determined, whereas the effect on equilibrium price depends on the magnitude of the shifts. When demand and supply curves shift in opposite directions, the effect on equilibrium price can be unambiguously स्पष्ट रूप से
Unambiguously?
unambiguously स्पष्ट रूप से determined, whereas the effect on equilibrium quantity depends on the magnitude of the shifts. In a perfectly competitive market with identical firms, if the firm can enter and exit in the market freely enter exit होता है, the equilibrium price is always equal to minimum average cost of the firms. With free entry and exit, the shift in demand has no impact on equilibrium price but changes the equilibrium quantity and number of firms in the same direction as the change in demand. In comparison to a market with fixed numbers of firms, the impact of a shift in demand curve on equilibrium quantity is more pronounced in a market with free entry and exit. Imposition of price ceiling below the equilibrium price leads to an excess demand. Imposition of price floor above the equilibrium price leads to an excess supply. Key concept: equilibrium, excess demand, excess supply, marginal revenue, product of labor, value of marginal product of labor, प्राइस सीलिंग और प्राइस फ्लोर, ये सब हमने इस चैप्टर में पढ़ लिया है. ये सब एक्सरसाइज करनी हो तो कर लेना, वैसे कोई ज़रूरत है नहीं, फिर भी तुम्हारी इच्छा एक बार देख लेना. एवरेज कॉस्ट क्या है? टोटल कॉस्ट पर यूनिट ऑफ आउटपुट. एवरेज फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट, टोटल फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट पर यूनिट ऑफ आउटपुट. एवरेज प्रोडक्ट आउटपुट per unit of the variable input. Average revenue, total revenue per unit of output. Average variable cost, total variable cost per unit of output. Break even point, break even point क्या होता है? Is the point on the supply curve at which a firm earns normal profit. Budget line consists of all bundles which cost exactly equal to the consumer's income. Budget set is the collection of all bundles that the consumer can buy with her income at the prevailing market prices. Constant returns to scale is property of prediction function that holds when a proportional increase in all inputs results in an increase in output by the same proportion. Cost function for every level of output, it shows the minimum cost for the firms. Decreasing returns to scale is a property of production function that holds when a proportional increase in all inputs results in an increase in output by less than the proportion. Demand curve is a graphical representation of the demand function. It gives the quantity demanded by the consumer at each price. Demand function, ये था डिमांड कर्व. डिमांड फंक्शन, अ कंज्यूमर्स डिमांड function for a good gives the amount of the good that the consumer choose a different levels of its price when the other things remain unchanged. Duopoly is the market with just two firms. Equilibrium, duopoly क्या होता है? जहाँ पर सिर्फ दो ही क्या होते हैं, दो ही फर्म्स काम कर रहे होते हैं. Equilibrium is a situation where the plans of all consumers and firms in the market match. Excess demand, if at a price market demand exceed market supply, it is said that excess demand exists in the market at that price. Excess supply, if at a price market supply is greater than market demand, it is said that there is excess supply in the market at that price. Firm's supply curve shows the level of output that a profits maximizing firm will choose to produce at different values of the market price. Fixed input, an input which cannot be varied in the short run, इज कॉल्ड अ फिक्स्ड इनपुट। और इसी के साथ ये चैप्टर हो जाता है समाप्त। अब मिलेंगे अगले चैप्टर में।